Yes. I myself am on Medicare, have only been on it this year. I was on Medicaid for 2 years because I have irreversible health problems, and I worked for 35 years. I worked as a hairstylist.
We leave the last few minutes of this program. You can find it online at cspan.org to take you to the U.S. House of Representatives, gaveling in possibly very briefly for a special weekend session.
The chair lays before the House a communication from the Speaker.
The Speaker's Rooms, Washington, D.C., July 30th, 2011. I hereby appoint the Honorable Ted Poe to act as Speaker pro tempore on this day. Signed, John Boehner, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
The prayer will be offered by our chaplain, Father Conroy.
Let us pray. Dear God, we give you thanks for giving us another day. We ask your special blessing upon the members of this people's house. As so many Americans have communicated to them this past week, there is great concern for our future. Give all members wisdom, patience, discernment, and courage to use the information they have, the broader understanding of the national concerns, and the responsibility they have been given to lead this nation into a balanced and secure future. Grant a double portion of a great prophet's spirit. Bless them, O God, and be with them and with us all this day and every day to come. May all that is done be for your greater honor and glory. Amen.
The Chair has examined the journal of the last day's proceedings and announces to the House his approval thereof. Pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, this journal stands approved. What purpose does the gentleman from Virginia rise?
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, I demand a vote of the Speaker's approval of the journal.
The question is on agreeing to the Speaker's approval of the journal. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker.
What purpose does the gentleman from Virginia rise?
On that matter, I would ask for a recorded vote.
Does the gentleman from Virginia ask for the yeas and nays?
I do indeed.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will please rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question are postponed. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by the gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Paulson.
If all in the gallery would please join in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Chair will entertain up to 15 requests for 1-minute speeches on each side. For what purpose does the gentleman from Minnesota rise?
Ask me to consent to address the House for 1 minute and revise next time.
The gentleman from Minnesota is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last weekend in Eden Prairie, Minnesota, I had the privilege of attending the second annual Randy's Run, which is a 5K race that is run in Eden Prairie in remembrance of U.S. Air Force Major Randy Vos, who lost his life while serving our country a year and a half ago when his CV-22 Osprey helicopter tragically went down in Afghanistan. And now his family and friends have found a way to honor his life and sacrifice through an annual event that is now used to raise funds for a college scholarship awarded to students at Eden Prairie High School, where Randy graduated in 1985. And in addition to this scholarship, Randy's Run seeks to increase awareness of the contributions of our men and women in uniform that they make every day to keep America free. Major Vos may not be with us, but his spirit does live on in the memories of his friends and family and community, and through the scholarships for local high school students who share his values. And I yield back.
Gentleman yields back his time. What purpose does the gentleman from Ohio rise?
Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker. I request permission to address the House for 1 minute.
Gentleman from Ohio is recognized for 1 minute.
As Congress struggles to come up with this deal over government debt, we all know that all we had to do was raise the debt ceiling, and that the chaos the country is being thrown into is not necessary. Simple. Raise the debt ceiling. Protect the credit of the U.S., and then debate how to cut our debt afterwards. We're trapped in a debate where there's another game going on over our heads, and that game involves the rating services, in particular Standard & Poor's. Rating agencies helped put the U.S. economy in the dumper in 2008. Dodd-Frank was the first effort to hold rating agencies accountable, when in fact they should have been subject to civil fraud charges as well as revocation of their license at the SEC. Just a few months after Dodd-Frank passed, Standard & Poor's strikes back with a threat to downgrade U.S. debt, a downgrade which would cost U.S. taxpayers billions of dollars a year in extra interest payments. The U.S. is sovereign. Standard & Poor's is not. When we work to raise the debt ceiling, we should also raise questions about Standard & Poor's. Maybe it's time to downgrade Standard & Poor's to junk status.
It's expired. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Michigan rise?
Unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend.
The gentlewoman from Michigan is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I'm going to tell a story that just happened this past week, which I think is just a vivid display of the human spirit and heroism as well. There's a fellow named Michael Trapp who had a very lucky week. He was flying his Cessna airplane from his home in New York over to Wisconsin, and unfortunately had engine problems. The radio air traffic control tower lost contact with him, and he crashed his airplane in Lake Huron. Now, I represent a district in Michigan, if you think of the mitten. Here, this fella unfortunately crashed his airplane right up, I should say fortunately crashed his airplane right off the tip of the thumb here. And so the Coast Guard was having a full search and rescue. The Marine Division is out looking for him. A day went by, the night went by, couldn't find this fella. And some very, very good friends of mine, Dean and Diane Petiprin, were out boating in their boat, and Diane Petiprin sees a fellow waving his sock in the middle of Lake Huron, and they saved that man's life. And I just think with everything happening in Washington here this week, it's good for us to take a moment and think about the human spirit and the people that have charitable and caring hearts. And with that, I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back her time. What purpose does the gentleman from Rhode Island rise? Without objection, the gentleman from Rhode Island is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, a lot of commentators have been talking about the debt ceiling, the market, the jobs numbers. What we should be talking about is people. Families facing tough decisions, looking for help from a Congress that doesn't seem interested. Americans are tired of watching Wall Street speculators, CEOs, and big corporations call all the shots. Working people need a Congress that understands today's tough economic reality and focuses on making their lives better. Unfortunately, because of politics in Washington and extreme ideology, that's not happening. My Republican colleagues have been very public about their intention to take apart Medicare and Medicaid to pay for yet another tax cut for the millionaires and billionaires and to preserve subsidies for big oil companies. They've decided our current economy is the fault of the American people, and now they're going to empty middle-class pockets to pay for it. The talk in Washington right now is driven by ideologies that really have nothing to do with cost savings or preserving the American dream. What it's really about is who suffers and who wins when Congress decides that ideology is more important than job creation and that Social Security and Medicare aren't worth paying for anymore. It's time we reward people for what they contribute, not what they can get away with taking. And it's time we expand opportunity and protect the middle class. It's time to focus on the real crisis in America, the jobs crisis.
The gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from South Carolina rise?
Mr. Speaker, I ask permission to address the House for 1 minute. Revise it.
Without objection, the gentleman from South Carolina is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, led by the positive leadership of Speaker John Boehner, House Republicans passed the best bipartisan solution to the debt ceiling last week, the Cut, Cap, and Balance Act of 2011. Liberals in the Senate chose to hide and had a tabling vote to cowardly avoid a recorded vote on the issue. I urge liberals to join conservatives and vote for a solution which creates jobs and stop the president who is stuck on tax increases destroying jobs. The president does not have a plan. He even admits he's bluffing. Sadly, this was further revealed yesterday when the gross domestic product was reported to be stagnant. Additionally, the front page headline today of the Washington Post proclaims, quote, economic growth at near standstill, end of quote. The president should change course and work for bipartisan proposals to create jobs and preserve the nation's credit rating. In conclusion, God bless our troops, and we will never forget September 11th and the global war on terrorism.
The gentleman's time has expired. Members are advised to refrain from making inappropriate comments about the Senate. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Illinois rise? Without objection, the gentlewoman from Illinois is recognized for 1 minute.
There is absolutely no excuse for this reckless, unpatriotic behavior on the part of the Republicans. The looming default crisis could be resolved in 5 minutes by simply raising the debt ceiling, as was done 7 times under Bush and 18 times under Ronald Reagan. This is the exact opposite of fiscal responsibility. The Republicans, led by their Tea Party radicals, are determined to cripple government and destroy Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security while leaving untouched a hair on the head of millionaires and billionaires or corporations that pay zero in taxes. I say to the Republicans, stop it. Seniors call sobbing about their Social Security checks. Our soldiers in Afghanistan repeatedly asked Admiral Mullen yesterday, will we get paid? Will our families get our checks? Shame on the Republicans for making that happen. In battle, when you accidentally shoot your own, it's called friendly fire. When you deliberately shoot your own, it's called fragging. Republicans, stop fragging the American economy and the American people. And I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise?
Request permission to address the House for 1 minute. Mr. Speaker, in this time of money crisis, we talk about the fact that we need revenue. Congress seems to be addicted to taxation as a form of revenue. But there's another way to raise revenue. Did you know, Mr. Speaker, that 27% of the land owned in the United States is owned by Uncle Sam? 52% of it in the West is owned by Uncle Sam. How much is that? That's the size of all of Western Europe. So maybe we ought to think about Uncle Sam selling some of that land to Americans. Not the national parks, not the wetlands, the sensitive areas, but that land by the Bureau of Management that does not in use now. And then we sell that land, some of it, and then it'll be revenue producing because it will people who buy it will pay taxes. Local taxes go to schools and help those schools. Something to think about in this time of raising revenue. Maybe Uncle Sam can do without 27% of all of the land in America. Let Americans own part of America, not just the federal government. And that's just the way it is. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia rise? Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, as the debate on avoiding a devastating default has progressed over the last several months, we've heard from many House Republicans that compromise is a dirty word. But the voices we should be listening to are those of the American people. What they've said has been loud and clear. According to NBC Journal poll, 53% of independents and Republicans want Republican leaders to compromise. According to the ABC Washington Post poll, 77% of all Americans think that Republican leadership has not been willing to compromise. According to the Quinnipiac University poll, 67% of Americans believe the debt ceiling compromise should be a balance between spending cuts and revenue. Yes, revenue. According to the Gallup poll, 57% of Republicans want a compromise plan. That's Republicans. And according to the CBS News poll, 78% of Republicans would rather have an agreement that they don't fully support than allow the country to default. Mr. Speaker, it's long past time we started listening to the American people and reach a compromise to avoid a national default. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Michigan rise?
To address the House for 1 minute, to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman from Michigan is recognized for 1 minute.
I thank the gentleman, Mr. Speaker. The administration and the Democratic Senate and their posturing show what America knows. We are being neither led nor governed. Yet in their policy irresponsibility, they remain united in their party unity. On the right, take note. It is as unwarranted and injurious for a Republican to call a Tea Party or a hobbit as it is for a Tea Partier to call a Republican a rhino. We cannot unite America if we divide the movement. Consequently, the time has come for the Tea Party to grow up and the Republican Party to wake up and come together to serve and save this great nation. I yield back.
The gentleman from Michigan yields back his time. What purpose does the gentleman from Oregon rise? Without objection, the gentleman from Oregon is recognized for 1 minute.
That was something.
Washington Post. The United States is a lot like a rich businessman who owns 2 homes, a yacht, millions of dollars in stock, but is in debt because he took out a big loan to buy a private plane. So here we are, to protect tax cuts for millionaires and billionaires, the job creators, $4 trillion over the last 10 years, loopholes for corporate jets, for private jets, for the oil companies, hedge fund billionaires, to continue tax cuts that haven't created a single job. We're going to cut real investment that would create jobs. We're going to reduce investment in transportation infrastructure 35%. That's 1 million jobs gone. Last week, you cut off the FAA, 90,000 private sector jobs and 4,000 government employees. You don't care about the government employees. What about those private sector jobs? A lot of them are small businesses. Small businesses. Thought you liked small businesses. So we're not only going to cut there, we're going to cut student loans, we're going to cut school nutrition, unemployment insurance, Social Security, and Medicare. Also, the billionaires can keep cruising at 40,000 feet in their private subsidized, tax-subsidized jets above the turbulence. The view looks good from up there, and maybe you'll get a ride.
Time has expired. What purpose does the gentleman from Illinois rise? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I taught high school government history for 4 years. For a bill to become a law, it must pass both chambers, then it must be signed by the President. The House has now passed 2 bills, which raise the debt ceiling, cut spending, and addresses a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution. This historical reform, for the first time, ties a debt increase to a cut in spending. It is long past time for the Senate to pass something. Their negligence threatens the fiscal health of this nation. Once they do, we can conference the bills, which is where compromises are then resolved. Or we can pick up their bill. But until then, the world waits. And I yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. What purpose does the gentleman from Oregon rise? Without objection, the gentleman from Oregon is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, last night we heard the Speaker of the House, John Boehner, talk about how he stuck his neck out and offered new revenues. Well, if so, instead of chasing the most extreme few Tea Party members of his caucus to craft an even more unrealistic proposal, why doesn't he work with 193 Democrats to lead Congress to the balanced approach that Americans want? New revenue would allow basic tax reforms, closing expensive, unjustified loopholes, and make the tax code more fair and simple. We can then cooperate on sensible reductions in long-term spending where there is already bipartisan agreement for agricultural reform, defense, and health care. If John Boehner is Speaker of the House instead of Speaker of the Tea Party, we can start down this path of fiscal stability and end this artificial crisis.
Gentleman yields back his time. For what purpose does the gentleman from Ohio rise?
Mr. Speaker, request unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend.
Without objection, the gentleman from Ohio is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, for far too long now, previous Congresses have treated increases to America's debt ceiling as temporary problems to be dealt with later on. Well, it's now later on, and we have to deal with this very serious challenge to America's fiscal health. House Republicans have now passed 2 bills that would end the debt limit crisis while cutting trillions from the deficit. Today, the House will vote down the Reid proposal. The Reid proposal is full of budget gimmicks that the American people are quite frankly fed up with. Not only is the Reid plan dead on arrival in the House, it appears to be dead on departure from the Senate. I urge all of my colleagues to vote against the Reid plan today because it's time for every member of Congress to join House Republicans in producing not a deal, but a solution to this debt crisis. One that makes real spending cuts, one that establishes real spending controls, one that forces the federal government to live within its means, and one that doesn't raise taxes on American families and job creators. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from New York rise?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend.
Without objection, the gentleman from New York is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to talk about the default crisis. And unfortunately, we are still talking about giving America the green light to pay her bills, because the plan this body passed just last night has since failed in the Senate. Here we are again, my friends. Here we are again, wasting another day as the deadline looms even closer. And while the plan passed in this body last night might have been good politics, it's not good government. My constituents are tired of it, I'm tired of it, and actually anyone who watched the nightly news for the last 6 months is tired of it. Washington loves to kick the can down the road. That's how we got here in the first place. This is our moment, but will we seize it? We need a plan, not another Republican manifesto. And there are better plans out there, plans that would create jobs, because the biggest crisis America faces right now is a jobs crisis. Plans that will protect Medicare and Social Security and Medicaid, and plans that rely on a fair approach between spending cuts and asking the most fortunate Americans to pay their fair share. Mr. Speaker, we must compromise and pass that plan. The American people and their economy are counting on us. With that, I yield back, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman yields back his time. For what purpose does the gentleman from Louisiana rise?
The House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman from Louisiana is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And after yesterday's action here on the House floor, we have sent not one, but 2 real solutions to this debt and spending crisis over to the Senate. The Senate's yet to take action on anything. The President refuses to even submit a plan to solve this problem. All we hear from the President are these divisive class warfare speeches. A speech is not a solution to the problem, especially when you hear all of this foolishness about corporate jet owners and millionaires and billionaires. If the President got his way, if the President confiscated every dollar from corporate jet owners and millionaires and billionaires, he himself knows that wouldn't solve the problem. And yet what you have is a spending problem in Washington. You don't solve a spending problem by sending even more spending to Washington so that they can blow even more money. What we actually need to do is not a balanced approach. We need a balanced budget amendment to our Constitution so that you can finally invoke accountability in Washington to solve the spending problem. Job-killing taxes, more tax increases, that only gives Washington more money to spend. Instead of facing the problem, we have got to stop ignoring the problem. The President needs to get his head out of the sand and address the real spending crisis in Washington. And I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Connecticut rise? Without objection, the gentleman from Connecticut recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, last night the Republican majority in this House, without the support of a single Democrat, did something very dangerous. And I'm not talking about the pernicious cuts that would damage the least fortunate in our society. I'm not talking about an ill-conceived balanced budget amendment that would surely result in our default. We should debate those things, and people of goodwill will disagree on how we do them. I'm talking about the provision of that bill that will bring us back in 6 months to have this discussion again, while Americans lose billions of dollars in their retirement accounts, while businesses and our markets face uncertainty. We will do this in 6 more months because of the Republicans. Now, I'm a House Democrat. Don't listen to me on this. Listen to the Wall Street Journal editorial page. That Murdochian mouthpiece of malicious malarkey wrote, "Republicans are not looking like adults to whom voters can entrust the government." Mr. Speaker, according to the Wall Street Journal editorial page, that's just the way it is.
What purpose does the gentleman from Michigan rise? Gentleman from Michigan is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I'm here to offer this House today a plan on how Republicans and Democrats can come together, avoid a government default, and do it in a way that really helps the American people. Let's cut the true debt that's crushing Americans today. And it's not the federal debt. Americans are underwater on their mortgages, burdened by student loans, maxed out on credit cards. If we help Americans cut their own personal debt, this will free up money where people can responsibly buy things. Businesses will have to hire more people. That's how you create more jobs, by helping Americans become debt-free. Mr. Speaker, I yield back my time.
The gentleman from Michigan yields back his time. What purpose does the gentlewoman from Texas rise? Gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee, is recognized for 1 minute.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker. This morning, we joined together to express our commitment to one nation. Unfortunately, we are in a collapse and a crisis because we are, as my good friend from Michigan said, drawn and strangled by those in the Tea Party who believe that America belongs to only one group. Well, I stand here today to say that we must not take to their words that says, do not surrender. You don't surrender when you work on behalf of the American people. You wonder why the economy is slow, because it is strangled by inertia and lack of action. Let's join together in a bipartisan way to lift the debt ceiling. If not, the President has constitutional authority to lift the debt ceiling and get members to move forward in this country to be able to protect the 401ks, Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Mr. Speaker, we are one nation. We should represent the people of the United States because we can create jobs, we can move the economy, and we can show the world that America is run by adults and we stand for the American people. I believe I stand for one nation and to represent all of the people. I yield back.
Gentlewoman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Tennessee rise? Without objection, the gentleman from Tennessee is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sometimes art imitates life. Sometimes life imitates art. I think today life is imitating art. I often reflect on motion pictures and learn from them, and when I came up here was Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. But currently, as watching this, I've been thinking about Blazing Saddles. Remember Blazing Saddles? Mel Brooks and Richard Pryor, they did a movie. They had a city called Rock Ridge. It was an all-white city. It was lawless, problems. And the governor appointed a handsome, sharp, young black man to be the sheriff. The first black sheriff ever in Rock Ridge. He went there and he wanted the townsfolk to help him prepare to beat off the thugs and have a better city. They didn't want to join him. He said, you do it for Randolph Scott. And they would have done it for Randolph Scott. And realizing that, they helped Cleavon Little, the sheriff. The Republicans, well, they'd do it for George Bush, and they did it for George Bush a lot. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Life imitates art.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from New York rise? Without objection, the gentleman from New York is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, on August 3rd, the United States will have $306 billion in obligations and $173 billion to address those obligations. At that moment, if the debt ceiling is not raised, our nation, for the first time in its history, will default on its obligations. The cost of borrowing for small businesses, home mortgages, student and auto loans will all increase. This will hit hard every American and could push this economy into another recession. The American people want a serious and balanced approach to avoid disaster and deal with our nation's debt problem. They want Congress to work in a bipartisan way to create jobs and new business investment. The House Republican short-term bill does nothing to create economic certainty necessary for sustained economic growth. Instead, it will keep the threat of default alive for months as a continuing drag on this economy. We need a real long-term bill to provide economic stability and certainty. We need a balanced bill that protects Social Security and Medicare, and we need a bipartisan bill that can pass quickly to prevent default. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back his time. What purpose does the gentleman from Georgia rise? Without objection, the gentleman from Georgia is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I'm grateful that I hustled over here this morning because I heard there was a question about what kind of options have we provided for the United States Senate. What can we do to get America out of this crisis? And I know the answer. We've got lots of choices on their desk, Mr. Speaker, and if you talk to them, I hope you'll recommend these. Just look on the desk in front of them. They've got 3 good choices. You want a long-term solution to this challenge? 10 years. Look at the House budget plan we sent to the Senate in April. 10 years we can solve this crisis. 10 years out into the future, cut $6 trillion out of the budget, put America on a track towards fiscal responsibilities. 10 years too long? Mr. Speaker, last week we passed cut, cap, and balance. 18-month solution to this problem. 18-month solution. Cut spending, cap spending, balances the budget. 2 years too long? Look at what we sent over last night, Mr. Speaker. 6 months. 6 months. It also cuts, it also caps, it also balances a 6-month extension on the debt ceiling. Mr. Speaker, when you talk to the Senate, please tell them 6 months 2 years, 10 years. The House has acted on all of those. They sit in the Senate awaiting on action, and I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Hawaii rise?
Speaker, I request unanimous consent to just the House bill.
Without objection, the gentlewoman from Hawaii is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, at what price your vote last night? People have the right to know. I can tell you what it wasn't for. It wasn't for our seniors. It wasn't to protect their Medicare. And it wasn't to protect those who need help the most, those on Medicaid. So I ask you again, at what price? You've heard speeches today about cut, cap, and balance. And we all know that amendment that came in at the 11th hour was on the balanced budget amendment. So what is this balanced budget amendment that you have put so much faith in? It is not what the people think it is. And, Mr. Speaker, I believe you have an obligation to tell people that the balanced budget amendment doesn't mean you simply can spend only what you take in. It means you might be able to spend only what you take in unless 3/5 of us say you can spend more. That's not what the people think it is. We've got to stop this facade. Or as we say in Hawaii, stop the shibai, Mr. Speaker. Tell people what they want to know. Tell them at what price you are holding this all up. Thank you, and I yield back my time.
Gentlewoman yields back her time. What purpose does the gentleman from New York rise? Without objection, the gentleman from New York is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I received a call yesterday from a senior citizen in my district that disturbed me greatly. It tore at my heart to hear the fear in her voice as she begged me to do all that I can to protect senior citizens. And I assured her that I would. She went on to say how hard she worked during her life, and she kept her part of the bargain. And now she expects her government to do the same. It really bothers me to hear some people suggest that poor Americans and senior citizens who get checks from the government are freeloaders. Everybody in Congress that gets a check from the government, they are all, how could they consider themselves as being different? We need to stop, regroup, and think about what we are doing. We need to think about all those people who have played by the rules. And now we want to change the rules in the middle of the game. Mr. Speaker, that is wrong, and I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the House will stand in recess subject to the call of the Chair.
And the House will be back in at 1 o'clock Eastern, working on some suspension bills and naming post offices, and also working on Senator Reid's debt ceiling bill, again at 1 o'clock Eastern. We take you live now to the Radio TV Gallery in the Capitol.